Hello everyone, today we're going to be looking at how to delete a user's account. To start things off, let me just say these videos are meant for educational purposes only, meaning that if you're going to go and use this code in production, I cannot guarantee that it is hack-proof. In fact, nothing is hack-proof. And we still have a lot more topics to cover before we are fully secured from most common attacks. So without further ado, let's get into deleting the user's account securely. We're going to make sure to prevent any kind of cross-site request forgery, and that's pretty much the only protection we really need for this, so let's get right into it. So as you can see on our secure site, we have a button, and when you click that button, it calls the delete account function. If we take a look at the JavaScript, that function is completely empty, and we'll be sending an AJAX request using our request function that we made in another episode. Notice here that our CSRF token is sent along with all of the other data. So we're going to send a post request to deleteaccount.php, a file we have not made yet, and we're just going to send no data, and we are going to just console.log the response that we get. So now in our PHP file, we're going to include utils, which is going to give us access to all of these functions that we have made in previous episodes that allow us to quickly and easily interact with our database. Keep in mind that this SQL update function works also as a SQL delete function, since they basically have the same flow. So we're going to be using the SQL update function even though we're actually using a delete query, and I'll show you how that works in a second. Now notice here that when the user logs in, we are setting their user ID and we are setting logged in to true. So we want to make sure that they are actually logged in before we go and try to delete their account. To do that, we're just going to check if logged in is set, if the user ID is set, and we also want to make sure that the user is actually logged in. So we'll make sure that logged in is equal to true. Now we don't need this is set here, that is a mistake, so we'll just take that out. Once we get here, that means that the user is properly logged in. Otherwise, they're not logged in, and clearly we don't want to allow them to delete an account. Now what we want to do is actually connect to our database. So we're going to call our connect function from before, and then we'll just check if that connection was successful. If it was successful, we'll close out of our connection. Otherwise, we'll let the user know that something went wrong. The next thing we want to do is call our SQL update function, but like I said before, we're going to be using a delete query. We'll pass in our connection, and then we're just going to delete from users where ID is equal to, and we'll just put a question mark here. This is going to be an integer, and we're going to put in the user ID that we saved on the session. We can check if this ran successfully by just wrapping it in an if statement and returning an error code if it did not work correctly. You can see we have one user here in our database, and we have no login attempts or any other information on that user. We want to make sure though that if there are login attempts or other requests from the user, that we clear all of the data that we have from that user. So we're going to do this exact same thing here. We're just going to copy it in, and instead of ID, we're going to be making the where clause based off of the user column. Everything else is exactly the same as before. And we actually don't really need to check if these were successful because they are not as important as deleting the user out of the user's database. Not to mention, if the first query ran successfully, there is such a low chance that the other ones would fail that it's not even worth checking. Okay, we're also going to go and replace all of our previous errors with error codes because we don't need to send the whole string of text. We can just send a number and then check that number in our JavaScript. Now what we can do is set up a little place to display errors to the user if something went wrong, and we'll just set this up in the JavaScript so that it will display errors just like our other functions did before. I'm not going to go into too much detail because this is mostly UI and this series is mostly focused on PHP, but basically if they are successfully deleting their account, we're going to relocate them to the register page. If something goes wrong, we'll display a user-friendly string of text to them. Now, one other thing we have to do, arguably one of the most important things we have to do, is make sure that the CSRF token that we sent along with this request is valid. So first we're going to start the session. Of course, we also needed to start the session to get the user ID and whether or not they were logged in, but we also need that to check the CSRF token. So here you can see we just check if the CSRF token is set, and then we'll call our valid token function to check if that token is actually valid. Of course, if that token is not valid, we will send an error code and then catch that in our JavaScript. So now we can go ahead and make sure this actually works, and to do that we're going to make a user, and we're going to also create some login attempts and other requests in here to make sure that those get deleted along with the user as well. So I'm just going to go in and add a bunch of fake things in here, and then we can see if they get deleted. So you can see my user has an ID of 1, so I've made the ID for all these fake requests as 1, and when I click that delete button you can see our account goes away and all of our requests go away, and we were redirected to the registration page, so everything is working as expected. So we're almost done. The last thing we want to do is log the user out once they delete their account, because the session variables did not magically go away. So we're going to throw in a session destroy after the user's account is deleted. That way, once they delete their account, they can't just go right back to that secure page. So if I go through and make another account, I'll register, verify my email, and log in. And once I get to my secure page, I can delete the account. And now if I try to navigate back to the secure site, it does not let me. And with that, we are finished with this episode. Thank you guys for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Make sure to check out the code on GitHub if you're interested. And of course, comment if you have anything to say about this video. We're looking at some new videos in the future, so stay tuned and subscribe if you're interested in this kind of content. As always, thank you for watching.